25 years have passed since this example of Japanese automotive luxury perfection hit the streets of South Florida. In that time, many of the incredible qualities that petrol heads and old white men came to love about the LS430 have long since faded. Magic carpet-esque ride, cabin noise like a library, and subtle understated beauty. In the last episode, we set out to perform cataract surgery on this car as our first attempt to rewind time, which completely transformed the front end.
Damn, that looks good.
And I also attempted to fix the unserviceable mirror, which didn't go well, so I had to settle for a used but good condition replacement, and now the car is back on the road in style.
Well, it was for a little while at least.
At this point, we're continuing the restoration of this revered Lexus LS430 with a mountain of OEM parts, including a full 4-corner shock and strut overhaul, along with a 4-corner brake overhaul as well, complete with rotors, pads, shims, and every single clip, as well as rebuilding the calipers using the official Lexus OEM rebuild kit. I wanted to learn how to rebuild brake calipers rather than just throw another $800 at the dealer for their rebuilt calipers, so I figured, how hard could it be? You join me in this episode where our first order of business is to start tearing parts off the front end. I hate these wheels, but even more so, I hate these stupid security lug nuts that some goober installed before I acquired the steed. After a quick wheel bearing check, we get our first look at what calamities await us. The biggest problem I see right now is that the upper ball joint doesn't look to be in super good shape, but that's honestly a problem for future me. The first thing we have to do is get these calipers off, and hot damn is everything to do with this brake system chonky. The size of the calipers and even the caliper bolts are just insane. The OEM rotors are so heavy, I honestly feel like they could work on a truck, let alone this passenger car. And that's exactly why we're doing this with all OEM Lexus parts. Yes, it's insanely expensive, and yes, my wallet hurts insanely badly, but this car was overbuilt to such a degree that we'll probably never see another car like this ever again. And as you'd expect, the rotors and pads the last guy put on this car are straight from the parts store, aka junk, so they must be dealt with accordingly.
Import direct, ew.
At this point, I realized I forgot to buy the rubber brake lines, and since I'm doing this properly with no compromises, I just had to stop and order those. This is the first of many things that it turns out I don't have, 2 of which are not my fault. More on that later. And unfortunately, I couldn't get 3 of the 4 rubber lines from Lexus or Amayama, which is fine because they're $70 each, which is completely insane. So I went ahead and bought all 4 from Sunsong, which is a hydraulic hose manufacturer I've had really good luck with. Both my LS430 and my 100 series Land Cruiser have Sunsong power steering lines on them, and I haven't had an issue with either of them in 20,000 miles. Knock on wood. Back to the suspension, I had to unbolt the upper control arm from the spindle to make room so that the strut would actually slide out, and since this car has aluminum spindles, I didn't want to go bashing on it with a hammer and leave a bunch of damage. So I just used a brass punch with my hammer and out it popped.
Oh, hey. Hey, that worked. Woo!
The strut came out super easily after that, and I'd honestly say we got a bit lucky that the ball joint popped so easily, but unfortunately my luck is soon to turn. At this point, it's time to dig into these calipers, and I purchased the rebuild kits, which include most of the things we'll need to do this full caliper rebuild, except 2 super crucial things. The first is this metal ring that's kind of lightly press fit into the cylinder and holds the rubber boot in place. Not included, /sigh. So I bought an aftermarket caliper rebuild kit, but of course there's a problem. Take a gander at those 2 little metal rings right there. I'm gonna let you guess which one is the OE one. Why does every aftermarket part have to be such shit these days, dude? Ah! Dude, imagine the fact that like this little metal clip is supposed to hold this sealant ring on, and then that little square ring right there, that one is supposed to return the piston in and out of the brake caliper. Like, if it can't be trusted to come up with this stupid metal clip, how the hell am I gonna trust it to seal my fucking brakes and make the brakes work? Needless to say, I had a feeling this was going to happen, so I hung on to all the OEM rings and we'll just reuse those. Now that we have those boots and clips off, we have to remove each of the 4 pistons from their bore. Easy, right? Well, I thought so too. It turns out that removing the pistons in these 4-pot calipers like these is actually quite a bit more difficult than I thought. Everything you see online says compressed air this, compressed air that, but they're working on tiny, like single pot motorcycle calipers, not a Chungus 777 caliper like us. So air gun in hand, we went a-shooting. Woo! That came out a lot quicker than I expected. Woohoo!
Damn, son.
That's why they say use a piece of wood. But I didn't want to. Now, how do I get the other ones out? Woo! those are in there. The problem is that once the piston is out, the compressed air escapes, so I was left hunting for a way to get them out. I tried unscrewing these giant hex caps, and that sort of worked, except then you only have access to 2 of the 4 pistons. So I kept fighting for probably 45 more minutes, and even tried resorting to fire, which accidentally lit the box that they were sitting on fire in the process. But eventually I discovered that using the brake pads themselves lets you create a combination of space that pushes all 4 pistons out enough that then you can just pry them out. Sadly, during my epic fight, I managed to nick a couple of the pistons, and so I'd have to find replacements for those. And not only that, I was super bummed to find that these hex caps had O-rings on them. And since we're dealing with brake fluid here, regular rubber or even Viton O-rings cannot be used. That meant I had to track down EPDM O-rings, which of course weren't in stock. So while we're here, and since we already have these calipers fully torn down, let's get these puppies shined back up. First, we gotta hit them with the obligatory can of brake clean per caliper, then scritch them up a bit, and then dunk them in the Concord. After a quick 30 minutes, they come out looking way better, and the grease and grime literally just wipe right off. All right, so enough of this depressing waiting on parts crap. Let's get something brand new, shiny, and OEM installed. The front suspension on this car really isn't in the best of shape, as you can see, but that's one of the primary reasons the LS430 is so exalted, so we've gotta make that right. And interestingly, the front shocks from the dealer have KYB stamped in them, but from everything I've been told and read, the shocks from KYB off Rock Auto or whatever are not tuned as the same from the dealer. One extremely nice thing about going OEM is the fact that these front shock mounts also come integrated with the bump stop and the bellow as one unit, which is not the case if you go aftermarket. The passenger side strut is in a lot worse shape than the driver's side, with the bellow ripped up and the remnants of what used to be the bump stop still stuck inside. It's clearly been leaking a long time, and that makes sense because you can feel super weird angular body roll in this car, and we've definitely found at least part of that cause here.
And now we break out the Sketchmaster 3000.
If you've ever done front struts like this, you'll know the arse clinching required when you start messing with these spring compressors. They basically squeeze the spring down with these 2 clamps on either side, and if you've never seen one of these go bang, well, that's why my booty's clenched right now. Getting the passenger side strut apart didn't prove to be too difficult, but as soon as that shock mount finally let go, I could tell there was a lot of tension in there still, and that getting them back together would be tough. Turns out it was very tough. I put these damn things on and off numerous times in multiple locations, and nothing I could do would compress them enough. I realized that the spring had to be compressed a massive amount just to fit back together like it was, so I had to tuck my tail and start calling proper automotive shops with real spring compressors. Shout out to Will in Dallas for getting these things turned around so fast. I barely had time to eat before they were calling me to say it was done. They even sent me a video of how difficult it was even for them, and damn do I hope these boys had their safety squints on for this one. Here I sat just 24 hours ago, bummed and defeated, but look at this. Oh yeah, baby. Oh! And now finally, we can put some shiny, brand new parts back on this car. One important thing I forgot to do was mark the orientation of the strut mounts, which I read can be a massive pain. So even while cleaning up this shock tower, I was just praying these struts just popped in without issue. I think this one might be dead on. Yes, dude, let's go. It's close enough that I can make it work, that's for sure. Don't you hate it when you're watching a car video and the guy says, installation is the reverse of removal? Me too, but in this case it's true. We simply got to get everything lined up, thread in that lower bolt, making sure the little notch marks on the nut grab back into the marks on the shock mount, then stick some brand new hardware on the upper strut mounts, grab that torquifier and get it all cinched down. And if this ball joint makes you as sad as it does me, hit that subscribe button. Or if it makes you really sad and you want to see me put out videos more quickly, check out the website I built called Time to Wrench. It's only for car guys, link in the description. Everything went smoothly on the passenger side as well, and I've got to be honest, it's been nice to get a couple of W's here finally. Both the front and rear right brake pads have wear sensors on them, which has been broken forever on this car, so that'll finally solve the super annoying VSC warning I get on the dash. And then the other thing is that I forgot to torque the lower shock mounts while the suspension is loaded. I just simply used my floor jack under the control arm, and just as the car is about to lift off the jack stand, that's when I torque it down. I also went ahead and swapped out those rubber brake lines on both sides with the Sunsong part. Those went on without a hitch, they fit perfectly, and I can't wait to attach the calipers later on. Speaking of calipers...
Yes, thank you, UPS. This was extremely urgent.
Remember those EPDM O-rings we had to order for those hex caps? Well, as you'd expect, the exact size I needed was 39 millimeters, which not only wasn't in stock, but it also had a minimum order quantity of 321 units. No, I'm not kidding. I wish I was. Naturally, of course, they had both 38.5 and 40 millimeter in stock though, so I bought both just in case, and it turns out the 38.5s fit really nicely. I went ahead and re-ringed the other 3 caps that I could get out, but one of the hex caps just refuses to come out even with my giant impact. Hopefully that doesn't come back to bite us later. And as I was standing here looking at these calipers, I wondered, are these the same size or maybe even bigger than the calipers on a 100 series Land Cruiser? It's hard to say for sure, but they're effectively the same size. An LS430 with the same size calipers as a 4-wheel drive SUV that has a 6,500 pound towing capacity? Good lord! So what's next? Well, we've made a huge dent in the OEM parts table, but of course there's still plenty more goodness to go. Unfortunately, we've got to wait a while more before all those brand new caliper pistons arrive from Japan. And as you can probably imagine, creating a video like this is nothing short of a labor of love. I genuinely hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe so I'll see you in the next one. Until then, peace!